You're going to learn how to profit from something that only makes most people poorer. Hi, I'm Keith Weinhold. This is Get Rich Education. Welcome into the fifth of 5 videos on the 5 ways real estate investors get paid. This is called inflation profiting.
Average Joe invested in real estate and became a boss. Ever compared investments and wondered, what makes real estate special? Inflation will be your new best friend, and you'll be increasing income while decreasing taxes because debt-free is dumb, compound interest is lame, the US dollar is fake, and real estate is real. Real estate simultaneously pays 5 ways.
Monetary inflation makes most people poorer over time. It is the debased purchasing power of the dollar that makes nearly all of the goods and services cost more in dollar-denominated terms over time. For example, you might like a Subway sandwich that you know it had the same ingredients and the same size a few years ago when it cost $7, yet today it costs $8. Now, we know that inflation is just awful for the big saver. Say a saver has $1 million in the bank. It pays virtually zero interest. Well, we know that a 3% inflation rate over time, which is about the long-term historical average, debases the purchasing power of that saver's $1 million down to $970,000 after year 1, and $940K after year 2, and $910K after year 3, and so on. So in order to get the opposite result, to get inflation turned around and working in our favor, you could be a $1 million debtor. Well, a 3% inflation rate debases the amount of debt that debtor would owe back. So a $1 million debtor, after 1 year, in real inflation-adjusted terms, they would only owe the bank back $970K after year 1 and $940K after year 2, and so on. Now, of course, they would still owe the bank $1 million in nominal terms. Nominal means in name only, but inflation-adjusted terms, it would be easier for the debtor to pay that back because wages are higher, prices are higher, and salaries are higher everywhere, and there are just more dollars floating in this economy, and it would be easier to pay that back. Now, the $1 million real estate debtor also has tenants making the interest payment for them, so that's why it can be really wise to get a whole bunch of the right kind of debt, as counterintuitive as it seems. And by the way, this is why Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Poor Dad author, says savers are losers and debtors are winners. Inflation is a big reason why.
Savers are losers. In 1970, when I graduated from school, $1 million at 15% interest earned me $150,000 a year.
Now, the government generally wants there to be more inflation for a few different reasons. Because if consumers know that their dollar loses purchasing power, they're more likely to go spend that dollar out in the economy and help businesses and help that economy rather than hold on to it and save it. The government also knows that the government has a ton of debt. We have about $28 trillion in national debt currently. So say the United States just has a $10 trillion debt to China. Well, if they can debase their dollar with inflation 3% per year, that $10 trillion debt gets debased to just $9.7 trillion after 1 year. And the government has even more reasons to want there to be inflation. What does this have to do with you in our $100,000 single-family rental home example that you have and you're holding on to for cash flow and all the other ways that you're paid here? You have an $80,000 loan on that $100,000 property. So consequently, yeah, debasement of the dollar over time makes it easier for you to pay back your $80K because you only owe the bank back over a number of years that $80,000 in nominal terms, not inflation-adjusted terms, and you have a tenant paying all the interest. Yeah. So therefore, at a 3% inflation rate, after just 1 year, you would owe the bank $77,600. Now, we know the tenant's also paying down the principal, but we already talked about that in video 3. This is the inflation profiting benefit that you have here. So yeah, therefore you have a $2,400 inflation-adjusted tailwind here. This is kind of stealthy, something that a lot of people don't know about. This fifth profit center is probably the least known about one. That $2,400, if we divided that by your $20K down payment that you have into this property, property. That's a 12% return. We're probably going to trend, though, however, more toward that 3% long-term debasement of the dollar when we go ahead and calculate up your total rate of return here, just to be conservative again. See, inflation transfers wealth from lenders to borrowers. It makes more sense than ever, especially at today's low interest rates, to be a person that really gets into long-term fixed interest rate debt tied to a cash flowing asset. This is also why I say that financially free beats debt free. You don't want to retire your debt in all instances when it's good debt and these debt payments are outsourced to someone else, your tenant. And what really is the source of this inflation? Clearly, with this one, it is the government. They do that money printing, or more accurately, it would be currency creation, pushing more dollars out into the economy and therefore devaluing each one that was issued previously. And you can check on the inflation number, the rate of inflation, at bls.gov/CPI. CPI stands for the Consumer Price Index. It's certainly not a perfect measure of inflation, but that way you can, over time, see with the same measuring stick if inflation is going up or down or what's happening there. So I am like an inflation cheerleader. I'm like, go, 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 because I do have a lot of this good debt, this long-term fixed interest rate debt tied up in cash flowing properties. So sort of big picture, as we look at your 5 profit centers and what you're doing here, this is relatively low risk because you are paid a number of different ways. Let's talk some more about what some of the risks are. I talked about in video 2 the importance of the market. You need to choose the right market where you have a reasonable expectation that there's going to be job retention there and a tenant can pay the rent. It's also important that you have the right management. You don't want a poor property manager. If you found one, you could take over the management yourself, but the manager is really what helps make this work. So I want to avoid the hyperbolic or the quixotic, which is part of the reason that I make these numbers fairly conservative here. There's no good zero risk investment, but real estate investing this way, where you're a direct owner, has the best risk adjusted return I've ever seen anywhere. And, let's just think about some of the worst examples with risk. A tenant damages a unit, or say a windstorm blows part of the roof off and you don't actually lose any money, but you have to manage a bit of an insurance claim there. So I just want to let you know that this is not completely devoid of risk with what we're doing here. Again, it's that best risk-adjusted return. You kind of get rewarded for educating yourself here with something like this. If a person just points and clicks and buys and sells with stocks, or is even lazier and just sort of sits back and lets employer contributions be taken from their 401k, well, if you do the easy thing in life, you usually get a result that's commensurate with the effort expended or the knowledge that it took to do that. You don't get a very good result. It's kind of like not working out and just sitting on the sofa leaves a person with a soft body. It's not too different here. A few other notes I want to give you before we add up your final rate of return is remember that your management cost was already considered with this back in video 2, making this passive. If you chose to self-manage, that would double your cash flow from a 6% cash-on-cash return up to a 12% cash-on-cash return. Understand as well that your returns generally fall over time. When we tally things up here in a moment, if we get, say, a 50% rate of return, this is year 1 that we're talking about here in this example, you might only get a 35% return in year 2, and it'll keep diminishing from there. What's the reason for that? The main reason is that you're accumulating equity in the property as it appreciates over time. And as I've discussed in other videos, the rate of return from home equity itself is always 0. Understanding these 5 ways is huge because now look, you know what to buy, what to sell, when to buy, when to sell, when to do a cash out refinance, which means you can access the equity in your property and take it out, therefore increasing your return without even having to sell the property. How many asset classes can you do something like that with? Virtually no other. Taxes and inflation are 2 things that make most people poorer, but in this series you learned about how taxes and inflation can make you wealthier when you understand them. Remember that you do need a mortgage in order to get the leverage and then your cash flow is what controls the mortgage for you. And you know, it's interesting, in a lot of investors' lives, they might have certain seasons. Maybe you have a season in your life where you're thinking, well, I think I want to be offensive at this time in my life, or defensive during this time when I see this going on in the market. When you're paid 5 ways, you're being both offensive and defensive at the same time. From the first one, leverage appreciation, and the second one, cash flow, I'd consider those pretty offensive. And then from the third, fourth, and fifth ones, your ROA, the tax benefits, and this inflation profiting benefit, you're defensive. So you're actually being offensive 2 ways and defensive 3 ways, all at the same time when you have multifaceted profit centers like this. So you've really learned why wealthy people's money either starts out in real estate or it ends up in real estate. So now that you understand what I've taught you here, I've got to congratulate you. Across these 5 videos, in only about an hour's time, now you understand something that veteran real estate investors don't even understand. Billionaire real estate investors don't even understand this. And real estate investing educators don't really even understand how all of this goes together. So real estate makes a lot of people wealthy, but a lot of times they can't even identify how those came to be. And by the way, I'm wearing a white shirt in this video, kind of saying, do good. You can be that good guy or that good gal out there when you are a property owner or a landlord. And I think a lot of that is because when you understand that you're paid 5 ways, it's going to be less frustrating for you if you have, say, a tenant that has to have an air conditioning unit that needs to be replaced, and you're thinking, oh, that's just going to wipe out my cash flow for a couple months. You won't tend to think that so much because you do understand that you have often 4 other profit centers. So it's about doing that good and providing housing that's clean, safe, affordable, and functional, and never getting called a slumlord. All right, well, before we tally up our 5th return source here and you get that total ROI that we've been building up to, I've got some great resources for you because you need to make this actionable. Otherwise, just having the knowledge won't help you at all. If you wish this discussion just kind of continued and you could take it with you in a portable way, download the Get Rich Education podcast. If you don't know about podcasts, you can just grab the Get Rich Education phone app on your phone and listen that way. Our podcast is where I tell you how to optimize these 5 ways that you're paid, tell you how to avoid mistakes, and with more than 3.5 million listener downloads, it's really one of the most listened to real estate investing shows in the United States, and all your favorite financial heroes have been with me to run alongside me for an episode, like Robert Kiyosaki and Grant Cardone, and pretty much everyone that you've ever heard of in the investing and finance space. Check out the Get Rich Education podcast. If you're ready to act and buy property and you're pre-qualified for a mortgage, go and just do what I do. You can copy me and buy from where I buy, and that is at greturnkey.com. GRE is Get Rich Education. Turnkey is a property type where you can buy a rental property, often out of state, that's already renovated, already tenanted, and then already held under management by a manager there with that property if you choose to have them manage it. This is the kind of video series that you're going to want to review over time because even 5 years from now, all these principles are going to be just as relevant as they are today. I would very much appreciate it if you told a friend about the series. Sometimes people ask me what they can do for me since I provided this for them. Just tell a friend or two that you think could really benefit from this 5-part video series. So here we go. Let's tally it up. You had a 30% return from leverage appreciation. In the next video, it was 6% from cash flow. Then it was another 6% from your return on amortization, a 5% return from tax benefits. Yes, we're going to go conservative again and just call it a 3% inflation profiting benefit. So there you go. 50% is your total rate of return from the 5 ways that you're paid with this example property that we used. And I guess if you wanted to, you could also adjust this total ROI for inflation and call it a 47% inflation adjusted return. But 50% is the return that we have here. And you know, even if totally half of things went wrong, a 25% return, now that you understand where it all comes from, is something that would not disappoint most people. Understand again that I did simplify the example a few times throughout. I've had people look at something like this and say, well, instead of 50%, I think you can get closer and it's 50.4 or it's 49.1 or something like that. But then there's usually 48 spreadsheets attached to something like that. So we did keep this relatively simple, and there are more avenues for you to explore and even make this more profitable, like some of those tax benefits that I mentioned in the fourth video, but didn't have time to get into. That is how all 5 ways that real estate simultaneously pays you provides you with a 50% ROI. People with a scarcity-based mindset live below their means. People with an abundance mindset expand their means, and now with real estate, you know about a vehicle for doing it. I'm Keith Weinhold. I've been so grateful for your viewership. This has truly been your Get Rich Education.
Americans are not saving for retirement. It's going to get worse as people live longer, so you need to think differently, but you can't lose your time. Real estate is the investment vehicle that has created more million and billionaires than anything else. Get Rich Education is one of America's top investing shows disrupting Wall Street. Your host, Keith Weinhold, is a true financial educator and has been an income property investor since 2002. Get Rich Education has created millions in passive monthly income for its followers. Now, Keith has a free book, The 7 Money Myths That Are Killing Your Wealth Potential. Get your copy now at getricheducation.com/book. Invest in what produces income for you now and later. Use the link in the description to download for free The 7 Money Myths That Are Killing Your Wealth Potential. Get Rich Education is on every podcasting platform and has its own native iOS and Android apps. Join Get Rich Education Nation to create financial freedom through real estate investing. Subscribe wherever you listen.